The blues and melodic minor. What does the blues and melodic minor have in common? Well, if you're a nerd like me, you know that today, September 26th, is a celebration of the fictional world of The Last of Us. And the music from The Last of Us is absolutely gorgeous. The main theme, it sounds a little something like this. So that's the first part. And then the second part, let me see if I can remember this. It sounds like this. And those are like the two little sections. So that first section has some bluesiness. Basically, when we're playing through this. Like this is all just run-of-the-mill E minor. Nothing too crazy going on, right? And then right here, that note right there, this is the blue note. You can call it the sharp 4, you can call it the flat 5, you could call it the sharp 11, you could call it the tritone. Lots of different names for the same exact note. But basically, what would have been the 4, the A note, we're playing A sharp right there. And A sharp over E, that is our blue note. That's the essence of the blues, really, is that you take a minor scale and you add that blue note. It's a little more specific than that. It's not just the minor scale. It's really the minor pentatonic scale. I'm trying to be as accurate as possible without getting too far into the weeds. But all we really need to focus on is that note. That's where a lot of the bluesiness comes from. And this melody uses it so wonderfully. Plays it on the downbeat. So you really, there's no way around it. There's no hiding it with other notes. It's very much in your face. And then we have that beautiful long kind of walk down back to that open E, which would be our resolution. So that's the bluesy section of the song. The next section of the song has some melodic minor stuff going on. And that part again sounds like this. So just looking at the melody, we have the flat 7 in the context of E minor. Remember, this whole song is in E, so when I'm talking about these scale degrees, which is basically, I'll make a video on what scale degrees are, but basically, the first note of the scale is the first scale degree. Second note, second scale degree, so on and so forth. Scale degrees are super important because that's where the color in music comes from. And now I'm getting all off topic. The first note of this section is a flat 7. And then we go to a natural 6, which that's a characteristic of melodic minor. And then we switch down to the flat 6, which can be in melodic minor, but it also is just kind of regular minor at that point. And then we resolve to the fifth scale degree. And then we put some other notes around it to kind of support the melody, and it all sounds like this. Very beautiful. A little melodic minor in there. If you are a fan of the fictional world of The Last of Us, you know that it is dreary and depressing and hard, and it's a rough environment. But then still in that rough environment, there are these sections of light that shine through, of humanity and of beauty. And I think that this music really does a good job of highlighting that, because we have the somberness of E minor, and then we have that real like unsettling blues note, and then we have more minor. But then when we get into the melodic minor, it kind of lifts for a second. Like, this is a little happier. And then we're reminded of our depression. And then we kind of come back to our home base of the E minor. And from my experience from playing the video game, at least the first one in the series, I think that musically, this is a wonderful depiction of a lot of what you experience going through and playing the video game. Is that by and large, it's difficult, it's dreary, it's depressing, and then there's these tiny little cracks of light and not exactly hope. There's really not a lot of hope. There's no hope, but just like goodness of humanity will kind of crack through a little bit, and then it's gone. Just like how the melodic minor cracks through for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's gone. So again, E minor, sad. Let me make sure I play these notes correctly. And then a little bit of goodness of humanity. And then as quick as it came, it's gone. And then we're back to just dreary sadness. And I think that that's a really good depiction of the actual story and the experience of playing that video game. A couple more things I'd like to say about this. I haven't looked into the way that Gustavo, who is the composer of this, I haven't looked into exactly how he recorded it, but I don't think he's playing it on just a regular guitar. He's probably tuning it a little bit differently. Because what's going on is we have the melody note, and then we have a repeated note. We basically play B twice. Now, he could be playing the same string just twice. That is definitely possible. Oops. But when I listen to the music, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds a lot more kind of open and sustained, which makes me think it's two strings. And then there's a bass giving us that low E, right? So that's how I've arrived at the first section, is that we have this melody. Oops. And that melody is happening over the constant. Oops, I'm sorry. Played that wrong. They both need to be B. So that's just happening constantly, right? Supporting that melody underneath. So one more time, bring that all together. Sounds a little like this. If you want to get really specific, he does a little cute hammer-on thing. it does add a good amount of personality to it. Kind of makes it almost a little westerny in a way. Now, the next part, in the first part of the melody, all those notes happened over the B's. Again. Happened over those B's, right? The second part of the melody actually happens over E's. So playing this section requires a bit of a stretch. I'm stretching from the 9th fret to the 5th fret to the 10th fret. And then the bass note is also going to change. So the first kind of section of the melody, I would argue, the first chord is E. Now we're implying A major, so we're going to change the bass note to A. And that becomes A minor. So we're still on A, and then we go back to E. So we have our minor 1, major 4, minor 4, and then minor 1. And then Gustavo, in his infinite wisdom, takes it a step further and plays this. Straight out of an 80s pop song, we've got an A sus chord, which, brilliant. Like, this is really another one of those moments where it's like kind of that light, that goodness of humanity kind of coming through for a moment. And then we resolve it to A, just regular A. And then we have our melody. And then we have just that coming back to reality. I imagine, Joel and Ellie, they're deep in their conversation. They're feeling better. They're feeling just like caught up in the moment. And then all of a sudden, it just comes crashing back down, the reality of the situation that they're in. So moving. Goodness gracious. This music is really beautiful, really wonderful. Get to talk about the blues a little bit. We get to talk about melodic minor. We get to talk about how harmony can really reflect and bring out the emotions of a narrative. It's amazing. Okay, since this is YouTube, and this is like a long form format, I would like to take a moment to talk about my experience with The Last of Us. This is something that I've really kind of never talked about on the internet, and this will only be interesting to you if you're a nerd like me. So if you only want guitar and harmony stuff, feel free to check out another one of my videos. But if you want to hear me ramble about nerd stuff for a little bit, then I will try to keep this as concise as possible. So I came to the party late, and I had a very interesting playing the game, The Last of Us, because I played The Last of Us Part 1 like 5 days before The Last of Us Part 2 came out. So I had this very intense experience where I played both games for the first time back to back. So remember, this is during lockdown times. So there's an actual pandemic happening in the world, right? And then I'm playing these video games about pandemics, for lack of a better term. And it was super, super intense. It was kind of like the most intense way that I could have possibly experienced that media. I played the first game and I just absolutely loved it. And to be honest with you, I think the story from The Last of Us Part 1 is my favorite story ever. Uh, the fact that the world is so cold and harsh, but and the people are so hardened, but even through that, Joel and Ellie are able to develop this beautiful relationship together. That's also complicated. Like it's not just a wonderful relationship. They still have their issues that they deal with. And that through the course of the story, geographically, they make a change. It's about a journey across the country. And then as individuals, they also both make a change, have these wonderful character arcs throughout the entire time. And one of the great things about it being a video game is that, it took me like 12 or 13 hours to play through it or something like that. And all along, there's these little experiences and these little pieces of dialogue that just really give a depth to the characters and to their development. So yeah, I just absolutely loved it. And then I was so excited to play the second one because it was coming out just in a couple days. And I kind of did this on purpose. I had heard that The Last of Us Part 2 was coming out. I had never played the first one. I've been told by tons of people that I would love it. And sure enough, I absolutely did. So I'm so excited to play the second one. And the second one just absolutely ruined me. It is so depressing. It is so relentless in the feeling of dread that you feel the entire time. And then it's also like twice as long. I really wanted to experience as much as I could of this video game. So it took me like 32 hours to play through the second Last of Us. And to be completely honest with you, when I finished that game, I just sobbed. Like, oh my God. I cried so hard. I feel so embarrassed about it because it's like, who cries at a video game? But goodness gracious, it was so intense. And it left such an impression on me that I think about the series probably every day. I haven't played it, and I can't even remember the last time I played it. I only finished each game one time. I've never gone back and like finished them. I've replayed little sections, but I've never actually completed the games again. This is all just coming from like my first impressions of what is it 4 years ago that I played through these games at this point. Um, but yeah, it's like every day I think about these characters. I think about Joel and Ellie and their relationship and ways that I identify with each of them and ways that I don't identify with each of them, and parts of my life where I feel like the world is a cold and dark and unforgiving place, but it kind of just doesn't matter. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is what it is. And how the light and the goodness of humanity can still shine through even though the world is very unforgiving. These are concepts that just like resonate with me to my core. And yeah, I absolutely love The Last of Us. The first one, I think, like I mentioned before, I think it's my favorite story ever. The Last of Us Part 2, I wish that a lot of things were different about it. I think that in The Last of Us Part 1, they set out to try and tell the best story possible and make like the best video game possible. In The Last of Us Part 2, I think they continued to try to make the best video game possible, but they didn't focus on creating an amazing experience. I think that they got a little too artsy with it. The whole idea, and I'll get into spoilers here. But the whole idea that you play through half of the game as the murderer of your favorite character from the first game, that's like a concept. And I think that they were so committed to that concept that the actual game itself suffered. Instead of before, with The Last of Us Part 1, the concepts were simple. Cold world, long journey across the country, surrogate father-daughter relationship, character arcs. Like, the concepts were simple, and then the actual game itself, the story itself, was magnificent. Last of Us Part 2 is the other way around, where the concept is crazy and mind-blowing and wow, that's so amazing, but the way that it actually plays out is not incredible. It's not amazing. I'm not a game critic at all, so I don't even necessarily want to like continue with my opinions about it, but that is my opinion. Is I think The Last of Us Part 2 is incredible, and I wish that I wish that there were lots of changes. What are those changes? I wish that it focused more on character arc and character change rather than just the artsy, intense concepts of having to play with the murderer of your favorite player because you have to play as Abby who murdered Joel. Trying to speak as clearly as possible. The other thing that I wish was different about The Last of Us Part 2 is that I wish that the main story beats weren't contingent upon time skips. It's like the whole game you're wondering what Ellie and Joel's relationship was before Joel died, and then you don't find that out until towards the end of Ellie's story. But the way that you find that out is that you just jump back in time. So this whole time Ellie knew, but us as the player didn't know. So instead of it be like when you make significant story beats contingent upon time skips, then it feels more like a sleight of hand storytelling rather than the actual story itself being good. And it feels like they're trying to make up for the fact that the story actually wasn't as good as maybe they thought it was. Because in my thinking, if the story is really good, then just tell it from beginning to end and it'll be good. And then if you want to create some time skips to make it even better, that's pretty interesting. But I think what The Last of Us Part 2 does is that if you told just the regular story from beginning to end, it wouldn't be that good, as good. So then they put these time skips in it to make it better. But that's just not my favorite storytelling device. But of course I don't like The Last of Us Part 2 as much as Part 1. I mean, if The Last of Us Part 1 is my favorite story ever, that means it resonated with me in so many different ways. So of course they're not going to make the same thing twice. So it's obviously I would be expecting way too much to love the second one as much as the first one. Okay. I think that's basically it. I mean, there are more things that I could talk about because I have lots more thoughts, but at the end of the day, this isn't a video game channel. This is me talking about the guitar and talking about music. And I'm actually really happy about the concepts that we've been able to talk about so far with just the theme of The Last of Us and how those harmonic movements and melodic movements really display some of the feelings associated with playing through the first game. It's amazing. Gustavo is wonderful. His music is beautiful and simple, and the textures that he uses are really, really wonderful. So yeah, I love The Last of Us. And this is the first time I've ever been able to really talk about it. And maybe it'll be the last time I talk about it. Who knows? So thanks for watching. Please feel free to check out another video. And more guitar and music content coming in the future. All right, I'll see you in the next video.